I remember that fateful night as if it were etched into my very soul, a night when the heavens themselves betrayed us, and darkness spilled forth onto the earth. I was a simple shepherd, tending my flock under a starless sky that seemed to weep for the lost and doomed. In those early hours, when the world still clung to a semblance of hope, a terror unlike any other began to unfurl its malevolent wings around our quiet valley. It started with an ominous silence that swallowed the usual chorus of crickets and birds of the night. The wind, which once sang gentle lullabies throughout the fields, now carried a discordant buzz, a tone so low and foreboding that even the ancient stones of our village seemed to shudder. In the distance, a strange, pulsating glow lit the horizon, as though the fabric of night had been torn apart to reveal a chasm of approaching unspeakable horror. I had heard murmurs among the elders about celestial omens and warnings of doom, but nothing could have prepared me for what was to come. As I lay awake that night, my mind raced with visions of giant monstrous shapes emerging from the void. Then, from the darkness, came the unholy sound of a great and terrible voice, a voice that seemed to speak directly into the marrow of my bones, promising that mankind's time was at an end. It was on that night that Goliath arrived, not as a mere man, but as a hideous beast from another realm. Tales of his kind had been whispered in fearful legends, beings exiled from cosmic chaos, bent on enslaving humanity and corrupting our way of life. His arrival was heralded by a meteor shower, a cascade of burning embers streaking across the sky, each a sign of impending dread. I watched, trembling, as a massive silhouette materialized against the infernal glow, standing twice as tall as any mortal man, with skin that shimmered like warped metal and red eyes that glowed with an unholy light. Goliath was not simply a giant. He was an omen of an alien demonic power. My heart pounded as I realized that our world was no longer governed by the laws of nature as we knew them. The creature's footsteps reverberated like drumbeats of the apocalypse, and with each step the earth itself seemed to groan in agony. In that moment of abject terror, I prayed fervently to my heavenly Creator, a plea for deliverance in the face of a horror so profound that it threatened to consume every spark of hope and piety. Little did I know that this night would mark the beginning of a battle that would etch itself into the annals of all time. A battle where the forces of light and darkness clashed in a spectacle of terror, and where my own fragile faith would be tested beyond measure. The dawn that followed the arrival of Goliath was no sunrise of promise. Instead, it was a pallid, lifeless glow that illuminated a village gripped by paralyzing shock and awe. The once proud, fearless warriors, men who had stood firm against bandits and beasts, now cowered down in trembling obedience, their eyes filled with dread. Rumors spread like wildfire through the streets, carrying with them the dark secret of the previous night. Goliath had visited our alehouses, not with fire and brimstone, but with a sinister elixir. This potion of cowardice, as it came to be known, was mixed into our brews, a vile substance that sapped the courage of even the strongest hearts and rendered men helpless before the monstrous invader. I found myself wandering the village square, where the stench of fear hung heavy in the air. The tavern, once a place of camaraderie and robust laughter, had transformed into a den of despair. I witnessed men huddled in corners, their voices barely a whisper, their faces drawn in anguish. They spoke in terrified tones of Goliath's dark magic, a magic that not only wrought physical destruction, but also infected the spirit, leaving its victims too frightened to lift their swords or even stand in unity against this invader. In a small alcove of the tavern, I encountered an old warrior, his weathered face scared with lines of regret and defeat. "David," he rasped, his voice quivering with both age and fear. "We have faced many foes in our time, but none like this. Goliath's elixir has stolen our valor. Our men tremble at their own shadows. I fear that if we do not rise now, all that we hold dear will vanish into the void." His words struck me like a bolt of lightning. Though fear gnawed at the edges of my mind, I knew that retreat was not an option. I recalled the sacred texts and the age-old promises of divine intervention, a promise that even in the depths of despair, a spark of light could ignite the eternal fire of courage. With my heart steeled by that conviction, I resolved that I would not let fear cripple our final stand against this monstrous fiend. As I wandered away from the tavern, I encountered further signs of desolation. Broken weapons, abandoned armor, and the ghostly echoes of warriors who had succumbed to the potion's treachery. I could almost hear the silent lament of fallen heroes, their spirits lost to the clutches of terror. In that sorrowful silence, I made a vow to reclaim their honor. I would be the one to challenge the alien giant that threatened to enslave mankind, no matter the cost to my body or soul. I retrieved my humble sling, a tool that, in the hands of a shepherd, was but a toy. Yet tonight, it was transformed into a symbol of defiance and righteousness. Every step I took toward the impending battle was accompanied by silent prayers, my every word an invocation of the divine power that had long sustained me. I was determined to face the nightmarish Goliath, to defy the potion-induced cowardice that had rendered my comrades impotent, and to prove that the human spirit, when fueled by unwavering faith, could indeed triumph over any darkness. Night returned, darker and more oppressive than before, as if the very heavens were mourning the fate of humanity. With my sling clutched tightly in hand, I set out on the perilous journey to the battlefield, a desolate plain where the earth bore the scars of ancient forgotten battles. The moon, a pale, waning disk, cast eerie shadows that danced along the barren landscape, each twist and turn of the light deepening the sinister aura of the night. Every step along the path was fraught with uncertainty. The road wound through a labyrinth of twisted trees and jagged rock formations, their shapes contorting into grotesque images that seemed to leer at my every move. I could not shake the feeling that unseen eyes watched me from the darkness, their gaze heavy with malice and anticipation. The air was heavy with a chill that reached into the depths of my soul, and even the faint rustle of the wind sounded like a chorus of ghostly lamentations. As I trudged onward, I came upon the remnants of the warriors who had once vowed to protect our people. Their discarded armor lay scattered like broken dreams, and discarded weapons told silent tales of valor now lost to fear. I knelt before a dented sword, its blade still catching the meager light of the moon, and silently vowed that I would honor the sacrifice of those who had fallen. Their courage, though dimmed by the insidious potion, would be rekindled by the fire of my determination. The path led me to a clearing where the ground was marked by strange symbols, runes that pulsed with an eerie, otherworldly luminescence. I traced the patterns with trembling fingers, feeling as though I were disturbing ancient magic, a force that had been laid to rest long before the coming of this interstellar terror. The very air vibrated with an energy potent and malevolent, and I could not help but shudder at the thought that these markings were a warning, a prelude to the horror that awaited me. With each step I recited prayers, my words merging with the silent song of the night. I clung to the belief that my heavenly Creator was guiding me, that even in the midst of overwhelming fear, a divine light shone within me. The memory of my childhood, filled with the warmth of faith and the reassurance of divine protection, gave me the strength to press on, even as the shadows around me grew ever more sinister. In the distance, I sensed a presence that made my blood run cold. A hulking figure moving with a predatory grace, its footsteps leaving deep, quivering impressions in the soft earth. My heart hammered in my chest as I realized that Goliath was near, his monstrous form blurring the line between nightmare and reality. I steeled myself against the encroaching dread, knowing that the battle to come would require every ounce of courage I could muster. At last, I reached the battlefield. A vast, desolate plain, bathed in an eerie, otherworldly light that seemed to come from no natural source. The landscape was scarred by deep fissures and strewn with the remnants of ancient conflicts, as if the very earth had been a battleground for forces beyond human comprehension. And there, standing amidst the desolation, loomed Goliath, the monstrous figure whose very presence defied the laws of nature. I saw him for the first time in all his heinous, horrific glory. Towering above me, Goliath was a behemoth of twisted metal and muscle, his form a chaotic fusion of alien anatomy and demonic artistry. His skin was a patchwork of rusted, otherworldly armor that seemed to writhe and shift as though alive. His eyes burned with a malignant fire, and his jaw, a cavernous, gaping abyss, exuded an aura of ancient malice. Every movement he made sent tremors through the ground, as if he carried the weight of 1,000 curses in each thunderous step. For a long, agonizing moment, I froze, my body paralyzed by fear. The legends had not done justice to the reality of his presence. The warriors around me, those few who still retained a flicker of courage, despite the elixir-induced paralysis, recoiled in silent horror and shock. Their once mighty forms were reduced to quivering bodies, too afraid to face the monstrous entity that advanced with deliberate, measured strides. In that moment, as Goliath bellowed a challenge that bellowed like the wrath of the cosmos itself, I raised my sling. The weapon, so humble in its simplicity, became the only tangible expression of my defiant hope. I reached deep into my being, drawing forth a prayer that resonated with every fiber of my soul, a plea to my heavenly Creator for the strength to stand against this massive nightmare. The air vibrated with tension as I selected a smooth, unadorned stone from the pouch at my side. Its cold surface was a reminder that even the smallest token of faith could become a weapon of great power against the overwhelming mass that was Goliath. With trembling hands, I loosed my stone, and time itself seemed to slow, as the stone arced through the night. Every second stretched into an eternity as I watched it streak toward Goliath, carrying with it all the hope and defiance that my heart could muster. As the stone found its mark, I saw a momentary flicker in the giant's unholy eyes, a brief break in the monstrous invulnerability that had so long defined him. A tremor ran through his colossal frame, as if the divine strike had pierced the veil of his cosmic armor. For that fleeting instant, the malevolent glow that had so completely consumed him dimmed, and I felt a surge of relief blossom within me. Yet even as Goliath roared in fury and pain, the air around us grew heavy with the stench of burning ozone and ancient decay. The beast's demonic laughter, a sound that mingled with the roar of 1,000 damned souls, threatened to engulf me entirely. I stood there, heart pounding and sweat mingling with the night's chill, as the terrible reality of the confrontation set in. I circled him warily, each movement measured and deliberate, my every action a silent anthem to the unyielding power of faith. In that surreal moment of horror and defiance, I could feel a divine energy coursing through me, a strength not of muscle, but of spirit. With each whispered prayer, I drew closer to the realization that my fight was not merely for my own survival, but for the rebirth of every soul enslaved by fear. Goliath advanced again, his massive hand outstretched in a gesture meant to crush both body and spirit. But I, trembling yet resolute, kept my focus on the divine promise that had carried me this far. I readied another stone, my fingers steady now with the certainty that the power of a higher, godlike force was with me. Every beat of my heart, every breath I took, was a defiant act of rebellion against the advancing unholy force. As I let the second stone fly, the heavens themselves seemed to hold their breath. The missile of hope soared in a graceful arc, a luminous streak against the void of night. It struck Goliath with an impact that sent shockwaves rippling through the stillness of the battlefield. For a moment, time ceased to exist as the monstrous titan staggered, his unearthly roar reverberating across the scarred land. I knew then that the battle had only just begun. The monstrous Goliath, though visibly shaken, was far from defeated. Yet in that moment of terror, I felt an unwavering conviction, a certainty that as long as I clung to the strength of my heavenly Creator, no darkness could ever extinguish the light within me. With renewed determination, I braced myself for what would be the defining moment of this devilish night. The ensuing clash between mortal defiance and extraterrestrial terror was a maelstrom of sound, fury, and despair. A nightmarish struggle that blurred the lines between reality and a living Hades. Goliath roared in anguish, his colossal form swaying under the force of the second stone's impact. Yet, his eyes still burned with an unearthly determination as he unleashed a cacophony of demonic curses. The very air seemed to dance with the cries of his wrath, a symphony of terror that completely drowned out the faint sound of my own labored breathing. Around me, the remnants of my fallen comrades, the once proud warriors whose valor had been stolen by the sinister potion, loomed like ghostly sentinels. Their silent forms bore testimony to the carnage wrought by fear. I could almost hear the faint sounds of their lost hopes, urging me on in this impossible mission. Every step I took was a defiant assertion that the spirit of man, when bolstered by unwavering faith, could stand against the very embodiment of the underworld. Goliath's massive footsteps continued to shake the ground beneath us, each thud echoing like a drum of impending doom. And yet, with every monstrous bellow and every flash of infernal light that emanated from his twisted form, I felt the hand of my heavenly Creator guiding me. The divine presence that had sustained me through every trial now surged within me, igniting a fierce resolve that no amount of cosmic horror could quench. I advanced with cautious determination, my sling swinging steadily as I prepared for another desperate attack. The swirling winds around us carried the scent of brimstone and ancient malice. Yet amidst that oppressive smell, a ray of inner light burned brightly within me. I recalled the sacred verses that had been my solace since childhood, verses that spoke of a power beyond the mortal realm, a force that would always rise to vanquish the oppressor of the innocent. In that charged moment, I knew that my next action would seal the fate of this nightmarish struggle. The ground beneath Goliath's colossal feet began to fracture, as if the very force of my faith had undermined his otherworldly might. Summoning every scrap of courage that remained, I drew one final stone from my pouch. It was no different from the others in its simplicity, yet it carried within it the culmination of every prayer and every hope that had ever been prayed in the darkest hours. I took careful aim as Goliath fixed his bitter gaze upon me, a gaze that seemed to pierce the depths of my soul. With a roar that was as much an invocation as it was a battle cry, I swung my sling and released the stone. Time slowed once more, each second stretching into infinity as the stone hurtled toward its target. I watched with a mixture of terror and hope as it connected with Goliath's flesh, a single, decisive blow that seemed to shatter the impenetrable armor that had rendered him invincible. The impact was cataclysmic. Goliath's roar, once a clarion call of unyielding power, faltered into a series of guttural cries that merged with the wailing winds. His form, once the epitome of alien might and demonic resilience, began to falter. The vicious glow in his eyes dimmed, as if the divine light within me had seeped into every crevice of his being, unraveling the vile force that powered him. In that shattering moment, I felt a profound release, a cleansing of the terror that had gripped my heart since that cursed night he appeared. As the monstrous giant staggered, the ground beneath him heaved and buckled. I fell to my knees, overcome by exhaustion and the raw, unadulterated surge of relief that flooded my being. The battlefield, once a stage for unspeakable horror, was slowly returning to a semblance of normal. The unholy light that had bathed Goliath's form receded, leaving behind only the faint remnants of a silent nightmare. I rose, barely able to keep my balance, as the first hints of dawn began to chase away the oppressive shadows of night. The surviving warriors, those who had watched in silent horror, stirred, their eyes expressive with the rekindled flame of hope. Their faces, once marred by terror, now shone with a fierce determination. Though many had been overcome by the elixir of fear, the victory of that solitary night was a testament to the indomitable strength of the human spirit when bolstered by faith. Standing amid the ruins of the battlefield, I felt the profound truth of what had transpired. I had faced an abomination, a giant monstrous being not of this earth, whose sole purpose was to enslave and corrupt mankind. And I was victorious, not by might alone, but through the unwavering trust in a higher power that transcended the physical realm. The divine strength within me had proven to be the ultimate weapon, shattering the elixir of fear that had held us captive. In the quiet aftermath of the battle, as survivors gathered and the land began its slow, painful recovery, I looked skyward with a heart filled with gratitude and joy. The horizon blushed with the tender hues of a new dawn, a promise that even in the deepest darkness, the light of the divine would always reappear. I whispered a prayer of thanks, not just for my own survival, but for the rekindling of hope in a world that had nearly succumbed to despair. I am David, a shepherd, a reluctant warrior, and now a guardian of my people. My mission that night taught me that true courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. It is my steadfast belief that even when confronted with horrors beyond comprehension, the power of faith can transform the darkest of nights into a beacon of eternal light. As I continue my path in a world forever changed by that cosmic confrontation, I carry with me the scars of that horrific night, a constant reminder of the price of freedom. And though the memory of Goliath, the monstrous invader from the void, may haunt my dreams from time to time, it is eclipsed by the radiant confidence that now burns within me. For in every whispered prayer and every silent act of courage, there lies the promise that as long as we believe, no terror, no matter how colossal or unearthly, can ever truly extinguish the light of the human spirit. I now wander the scarred plains and rebuilt hamlets, ever vigilant against the resurgence of darkness. I share my tale with those who have lost their way, urging them to remember that true power lies within, a spark of divinity that no external force can ever quench. In the silent moments before dawn, when the remnants of night still linger like ghostly memories, I close my eyes and see the monstrous form of Goliath fading into oblivion, a testament to the fact that even the most nightmarish terror is powerless before the light of unwavering faith. Thus I continue my journey, not as a man haunted by the horrors of the past, but as a beacon of hope for all who find themselves trapped in the shadow of despair. My tale, carved into the annals of time by blood, sweat, and prayer, serves as a solemn reminder that no matter how vast the darkness, the human spirit, when ignited by divine love, will forever shine through.
Hello, my Nightmare Obsession fans. We hope you loved this story and were almost frightened to death, left wanting even more. If so, please share video and our channel link with friends and family and ask them to subscribe, like, comment, and share with their friends and family too. We really want to create more nightmarish horror stories for you, so please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel now. We would really appreciate it. Thanks so much.